It was 6:02 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I looked at my phone and thought, nobody calls with good news at 6 a.m. The name on the screen said Preston, my boss, and something in my gut already knew. I answered with a calm voice, the kind you train yourself to use after years in corporate environments. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask how I was. He simply told me I was no longer needed at the company. He called me difficult to manage. He compared me. 10 years of my work, 10 years of my life, to legacy infrastructure. Like I was an outdated system that needed to be replaced. I didn't say a word. I just listened. Not because I was too shocked to speak, but because I had seen this before. I had watched leadership make decisions like this, fast, careless, and always without understanding the consequences. When powerful people feel threatened, they don't think clearly. They just cut. When the call ended, I sat on the edge of my bed for a moment, holding the phone in silence. And I want to be honest with you, it wasn't sadness I felt. It was clarity. The kind of sharp, quiet clarity that only comes when you realize the decision has already been made, and now you get to decide what happens next. I got up, walked straight into my home office, and I got to work. The first thing I noticed when I logged into the company system was that my access was still fully active. That told me everything I needed to know. Whoever made the call to let me go hadn't bothered to coordinate with operations. The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, which, honestly, was exactly the kind of leadership problem I had been warning about for years. Now, I want to be clear about what I did and what I did not do. I did not delete files. I did not trigger alerts. I did not steal anything. What I did was simply open the client relationship database. The system I had personally spent years building from the ground up. This wasn't just a list of names and contract numbers. This was a living, breathing record of real human relationships. Every client had behavioral notes, personal preferences, communication styles, decision-making patterns. I had built most of it myself through years of showing up, listening, and paying attention when no one else bothered to. I reviewed it carefully. And then I looked at the upcoming quarterly meeting, Preston's big moment to perform in front of the board and look capable. The meeting was still on the calendar, fully intact. So I quietly removed the key attendees from the invite list. The meeting still existed. It just had no purpose anymore. No alerts fired. No notifications went out. From the outside, everything looked perfectly normal. But the foundation of that moment had already been rearranged silently and without a single trace. I closed my laptop, stood up, and felt nothing dramatic. No anger, no satisfaction. It was simply a correction. And I already knew exactly how it would unfold. Later that morning, I took my dog for a walk through the city. Chicago in the cold is something else. That sharp air hits you and forces you to think clearly whether you want to or not. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped on a name I hadn't called in years. Marcus Thorne. A competitor who had tried to recruit me more than once, and every time, I had turned him down out of loyalty to a company that, as it turned out, saw me as outdated equipment. I pressed call. He picked up in seconds. Dana, he said. Just my name. No surprise, no small talk, because men like Marcus always know when a call like this is coming. Morning, I said. I'm available. There was a short pause. Then he asked directly whether I had been let go. I said yes, simply and without drama. He laughed, not unkindly, more like someone watching a chess move they had predicted a long time ago. He asked what I wanted. I told him. Senior role. Stronger compensation. Full account control. No negotiation, no back and forth. He accepted on the spot. By the time I got home and took off my coat, my offer letter was already in my inbox. I read it once, signed it digitally, and just like that, I was the newest senior executive at Apex Capital. The transition didn't feel like starting over. It felt like arriving somewhere I should have been already. But back at my former company, something was beginning to shift, and not in a good way. Preston tried to run operations the way he always had, by looking at the surface of things. He knew names. He knew contract values. What he didn't know, what he had never taken the time to understand, were the real relationships underneath all of it. Clients started asking questions. Where was Dana? Why the sudden change? Leadership had no answers that felt real, because the answers they gave weren't real. They were corporate speak dressed up as reassurance, and clients, real clients who had been doing business with me personally for years, could feel the difference immediately. Meetings became disorganized. Communication slowed down. Response time stretched. The kinds of small frictions that are easy to ignore at first, until suddenly you realize the whole machine is grinding, and then the quarterly meeting happened, or rather, didn't happen. Not the way Preston had planned. Without the key stakeholders in the room, what was supposed to be his moment of authority became a quiet, confusing disaster. No one said it out loud at first, but everyone noticed. What followed wasn't loud or dramatic. It was something worse, a slow unraveling that nobody in leadership could explain or stop. At Apex, I was already hearing from former clients. They weren't angry. They were simply uncertain, reaching out because they trusted me personally, not the logo on the email signature. I didn't pressure anyone. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep. I just communicated clearly, consistently, and honestly. That was enough. Trust, I've learned, doesn't follow companies. It follows people. One by one, quietly and without spectacle, client relationships began migrating toward where I was. Marcus watched the numbers shift in real time and understood immediately that what he had brought into Apex wasn't just talent, it was momentum. Meanwhile, back at my old company, the confusion turned to panic. Legal teams were brought in. Internal investigations began. They were looking for evidence of wrongdoing, data theft, contract violations, something they could point to. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. I had never broken a single rule. Everything I had done was within the bounds of my access and my role, right up until the moment that role was taken from me over a 6-minute phone call before sunrise. Preston reached out to clients personally, trying to hold things together with direct communication. But it didn't land. The familiarity wasn't there. The history wasn't there. He was speaking words without the relationship underneath them, and clients could sense it the same way you can sense when someone is reading from a script. Weeks passed. Then the investor communications began surfacing publicly: loss reports, client departure numbers, structural explanations that didn't quite add up. Leadership struggled to frame a story that made sense, because the real story was one they couldn't tell, that they had removed the person holding everything together and had no plan for what came next. I didn't follow these developments in real time. I didn't need to. I already understood the outcome because I understood the structure. When you remove the foundation of something and replace it with nothing, the result isn't a mystery. It's just physics. At Apex, my role expanded naturally. Not because I asked for it, but because the results spoke first. Client retention improved. Decision-making accelerated. Marcus would often say that the change wasn't subtle, it was immediate and measurable. He told me once that I wasn't just an employee. I was a strategic shift. One morning, I received a message from someone still working at my former company. 3 words: everything is collapsing. I read it once. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care about the people still there, I did. But because there was nothing left for me to say to that chapter. I put my phone down and went back to work. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't spend a single night plotting anyone's downfall. What I did was simply stop holding things together for people who had decided I wasn't worth keeping. Systems don't collapse because of what people take when they leave. They collapse because of what those people were and what leadership never had the wisdom to understand, protect, or even acknowledge. Preston called me difficult. He called me legacy infrastructure. He made that call at 6:02 in the morning thinking he was simplifying his life. What he was actually doing was removing the keystone from an arch and waiting to be surprised when everything fell. I didn't make that happen. I just stopped preventing it. And sometimes, that's the most powerful thing a person can do.